My name is William G. Krejci. I have written now 7 books. I started with 3 mystery novels, the Jack Sullivan mysteries. The other titles that I've written, Buried Beneath Cleveland, Lost Cemeteries of Cuyahoga County, and in that one I found 55 to 57 cemeteries in the greater Cleveland area that nobody previously knew had existed. They'd been lost for a little better than 100 years for the most part. The next book I released was Haunted Put-in Bay, and that tells a number of ghost stories up on South Bass Island, everything from Perry's Victory and International Peace Memorial National Monument to the Park Hotel. That fall, I did a collaboration release with John W. Myers. That book is Haunted Franklin Castle, famous Franklin Castle located on Cleveland's west side. It gives the legends, of course, gives the ghost stories, but it gives a very comprehensive look at the history of the house. Most recent release was 2019's Ghosts and Legends of Northern Ohio. And that covers 2 very site-specific legendary hauntings, one being Helltown, which is today Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and it concludes with the Gore Orphanage legend out on the western border of Lorain County. In between, there are stories of railroad ghosts, canal ghosts, haunted cemeteries, witches' graves, haunted inns and taverns, and crybaby bridges. A lot of people ask me whether you're a writer or you're a historian, what do you do? And I'm an investigative historian. I'll take a story, something that we accept as everyday common fact, and I'll take a look at it and I'll say, well, how much of it is true? Is it true? I'll look at something, in the case of, Ghosts and Legends of Northern Ohio in this case, has it been written about? And if so, can I really add to the story in any way? If I can't, I'm not going to. Gore Orphanage, a great example, found out that there really was a kid that was killed down there. Added that to the story. Found out that there was a hospital, that the people who owned the orphanage also owned a hospital in Cleveland, and that hospital did burn down, and it killed 4 people. Something that's been left out of the story. If I can't add to the story, I'm not going to include it. If I can, because the last thing I want to do is be one of those people who just takes the same story and just regurgitates the same old thing without actually going and interviewing people that are related to the story. And if I have nothing new to add, it's not going to make it in. So I found that newspapers are an excellent original source. Go to a newspaper article that was written at the time that the event happened. You'll be surprised what you can find. There's a great example of this being a story that appeared during the later part of the 19th century, and this story appeared of this ghostly headless phantom near the railroad tracks holding a lantern emitting a blue light, and he had no head on him, and he was, they believed, looking for his head, and he was sitting there in the gloom, and he would vanish into the night as trains were going past. And it says that they believed that it was the ghost of a man named Jimmy Welsh, who had been horrifically killed when his head was cut off as a conductor of a train some months earlier, and that he had, one story says that he fell between the cars and the train rolled over him. Another one said he got pinned. Okay, that's a great story, and that's been written about by at least 1 or 2 other authors. But they say the same thing. They all say the same thing. I went back to the story, but I also went back to the original story of the accident when he was killed, and I found his name was not Jimmy Welsh. His name was John Welsh. I found out where he was from, who his family was, how he was really killed. He was a conductor, but it was not a passenger train. It was a train carrying oil tanks. And he was stopped, and the train came uncoupled, and he went back to apply the brakes so they could back up and reconnect. And while he was doing that, another section rolled, and it pinned him and crushed his head between them. And he was horrifically pinned for a number of hours till the wrecker can arrive, and it derailed a number of cars as well. And that's a real story. So that's why I couldn't find anything on him originally. As I'm looking up Jimmy, they got the name wrong. It was John. So newspapers are a terrific firsthand source to go to. That's a great original source. I want to give as much truth as possible. I hate embellishments in a story for just because you think it's going to sell better and it's going to be like, well, it'll make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. No, there are other ways that you can really make something stand out. I'm a very honest person, so I like to go for honesty. I like to tell the truth of the story as best as I can, and that's something that I'm finding more and more that a lot of people really, really like to sensationalize on something at the cost of an honest story. I would recommend a couple right off the top of my head. Charles Cassidy has written, he wrote Cleveland Ghosts. It's a fantastic book. I would look up James A. Willis. He wrote, one of my favorites is Ohio's Historic Haunts. It's a fantastic book. It's by far one of my favorites. It's one of the most honest books that I have ever seen. Of course, a woman named Wendy Quile wrote a book, Disasters of the Lake Erie Islands, which is great. One of them that I really enjoy, though, is Haunted Cleveland by Chuck Gove and Beth Richards. That is a terrific book, and they host the Haunted Cleveland tour also. How many people are into horror stories? How many people are into those ghost stories? It's a very, very popular subject. It's, I think a lot of it is our interest and our fascination with the unknown. What a lot of it comes down to, because it's something that we don't have answers to. What is a haunting? What is a ghost? We don't know. I can't say if a place is haunted or not. I might go somewhere and be with a group doing a paranormal investigation and not get anything. Doesn't mean it's not haunted, just simply means didn't catch anything, that's all. Since I was a kid, 5 years old, it was the Franklin Castle that got me interested in that. I was about 5 years old. We were driving home in the family van from my grandma and grandpa's house in Cleveland, headed out to Avon Lake where we were living, and we were taking the scenic route. And our car pulled up at the intersection of 44th and Franklin, and my dad says, "Hey kids, look, that's a real haunted house." For my dad to say something like that, it's very profound. My jaw just about hit the floor of the car.